My Life and Struggle. Autobiography of Badshah Khan. The Gandhi-Irwin Pact. After the Gandhi-Irwin Pact had been concluded, all the political prisoners were released except myself. I remained all alone in the Gujarat prison. I asked the superintendent, "Why are you keeping me here?" He told me that a delegation of Muslim leaders was coming to see me. Among them were Sir Fazal Hussain and Sahibzada Sir Abdul Qayyum. I told the superintendent that I did not want to see them. When we were in trouble, I said, they didn't lift a finger to help us. They had forgotten all about us. Now they have suddenly remembered me. Why? Please ask them not to come, for I don't want to see them. Meanwhile, a delegation of Pathans had gone to see Gandhiji. They told him that I was the only one of all the political prisoners who had not been released. This is gross injustice, they said, and it is only because Sir Stuart Pearce, the Chief Commissioner of the province, is against his release. He has even gone as far as to write to the Viceroy saying, there is no room for both us in the frontier province. Either Abdul Ghaffar Khan goes or I go. Gandhiji went to see Lord Irwin and told him that I too should be released because I was a member of the Congress. Lord Irwin was a very nice man. He said to Gandhiji, "Do you mean to say that he, a Pathan, believes in non-violence? Impossible. No Pathan does. If they say they do, they are lying. You should go to the frontier province and see for yourself how non-violent the Pathans are." But in spite of what he said, Lord Irwin saw to it that I was released. When I returned to the frontier province, my heart was deeply touched by the condition of the country and by the enthusiasm of the people. I immediately started working again. Not a minute was wasted. I wanted to inspire the people with courage and self-confidence. In my lectures and speeches, I told them, one horn of the British is broken already. Now, Pathans, it is up to you to break the other. Arise, gird up your loins. This is your country, the country God has given to you and your children. But because of your selfishness, because of the disharmony amongst you, foreigners are occupying your country today. Although God has given them a country of their own, in their greed they have taken your country too. Your children have to go hungry so that their children may have plenty. Arise and break the other horn. The British disliked my lectures and especially my remarks about the broken horn. They said to my colleagues, "Don't you see, he doesn't want peace or peaceful settlement. He only wants to sow discord. You mark our words, he will create trouble for you. You are all competent," they said. "But he is not educated like you. Don't you see, you people do all the work and the credit goes to him." The British succeeded in influencing some of my colleagues who went to Mardan and called a meeting at the house of Qazi Ataullah. They asked me to postpone my lecture tour and stop mentioning the broken horn. I said, "I see. And what would you like me to tell the people?" They said, "Tell them that now we have this truce and we should offer the British the hand of friendship." I said, "But that won't make the Pathans the ardent patriots I want them to be. Besides, a truce is a temporary arrangement. It won't last. God has now given us this splendid opportunity to work and we should not waste any time." But some of my colleagues had become afraid. They would not do any more work, neither would they allow me to work. They thought that if I continued touring and making speeches, I would be arrested again, and they were afraid that they would also be taken prisoners then. And that was a sacrifice they were not prepared to make. All India National Congress Committee meeting was being held at Karachi and we had been invited to attend. This was the first time we attended a Congress meeting. About 100 Khudaidat Khidmatgars as well as their band, all beautifully dressed in their attractive red uniforms, came with me. On the way we were able to make propaganda too, for at every halt in Khudaidat Khidmatgars and the band got down the train and and attracted great attention. We arrived at Karachi in style. The Congress had arranged a special and separate camp for us. Our Khudaidat Khidmatkars were very enthusiastic and brave. They had strong sense of discipline and therefore they were given the most difficult duties at the Congress session. They acquitted themselves of their tasks so well and with such dignity that soon they became extremely popular and everyone looked upon them with respect. At this Congress session, we had the opportunity to get to know Gandhiji and Jawaharlal Nehru and other Congress leaders and to discuss the problems of national interests with them. Jawaharlal and I. Once I attended a meeting of the working committee of which I was the member at the house of Dr. Ansari in Delhi. At that time, I had not yet made Jawaharlalji's acquaintance, and he did not know me either. Yet, of course, we became friends and we came to know each other's character and temperament. Well, at that committee meeting, Jawaharlal took me to one side and said, "We are giving the Peshawar Congress Committee a monthly allowance of 500 rupees for their expenses and we intend to give your jirga 1000 rupees a month from now on." I said, "Pandit ji, we don't need your money, so please don't send us any. You don't think this country belongs only to you people, do you? It belongs to us too, you know. This country belongs to all of us. Therefore, we can carry our own burden. If you really want to help us, then build a school for our girls and a small hospital." This somehow made Jawaharlal ji angry and he did not reply. But he went and complained to Dr. Ansari that I was a very proud and arrogant man. Later, Dr. Ansari asked me why I had upset Jawaharlal ji. I replied that I had no intention of upsetting him. I said, "I am a Khudaidat Khidmatkar and an arrogant Khudaidat Khidmatkar is a contradiction in terms." I told Dr. Ansari exactly what had passed between Jawaharlal ji and me. Later, when Jawaharlal ji and I came to know each other better and began to understand each other's temperament, we began to like each other and indeed love each other more than if we had been brothers. Actually, I hate to talk about money and I had never in all my life been able to beg for money. The members of the working committee used to get their railway fare. Jawaharlal ji quarreled with me about that too, but I always paid my own fare. When I returned from Karachi, I started on another tour. I first went to Kohat and from there I began the tour of the district. The British recruiting officers complained about me to the Viceroy. They said, "Kohat is one of our recruiting centers, therefore we cannot allow Abdul Ghaffar Khan to tour this district. If he insists, we shall arrest him." Lord Irwin had left and Lord Wellington had been appointed Viceroy in his place. He had told Gandhiji that they wanted to arrest me, but Gandhiji had said that they could not do that as it would be against the Gandhi-Irwin Pact. Gandhiji also told the Viceroy that Lord Irwin had asked him to visit the frontier province and he asked the Viceroy's permission to go, but Lord Wellington refused. Then Gandhiji said, "All right, if you don't want me to let me go, let Jawaharlal ji go in my place." But the Viceroy refused that too. Then Gandhiji asked whether Devdas, his son, could go, and finally the Viceroy reluctantly agreed. We met Devdas in Peshawar, from where we were to take him to Usmanzai by lorry. As we were passing Shahi Bagh, a friend of ours drove up in his motor car. We stopped the lorry and got into the car. Two Khidaidat Khidmatkars were in the front seat. One of them drove the car. They were dressed in their attractive red uniforms and the car was flying with the national flag. Devdas, Khurshid Behan and I sat in the back seats. When we arrived at Charsadda, we learned that a dacoit called Qazi was lying in wait for us in the woods near the Sardaryab bridge. With the intention of attacking the lorry we were supposed to be travelling in. And indeed, when we were near enough, the dacoit began to fire at the lorry. When the lorry stopped, he came over and searched it. He must have been very disappointed not to find any of us in the lorry. However, one of the men had been wounded and we took him to Charsadda hospital for treatment. Later, we found out what was at the bottom of this incident. It appeared that one Kulli Khan had sent for Qazi and, at the government's suggestion, had asked him to hide in the wood and wait for instructions to attack and kill us. When we left Peshawar, word had been sent to Qazi through the Nali police that we were traveling in a lorry. It was by the grace of God that our friend happened to meet us and that we travelled in his car instead. And thus the government's carefully laid plan came to a naught. Afterwards, I learned that Qazi, the dacoit, had been killed by the Afridis, who said that what he had done was wicked and against the Pakhtun Wali, the moral law of the Pakhtuns. And they told him, "Why didn't you think what a terrible blow to our reputation in India it would have given if you had killed Gandhiji's son?" We reached our destination without any further incidents. Later, Devdas toured the whole district and we showed him everything. Then he understood that the British were angry and annoyed with us only because of the nationalist and patriotic work we were doing. In those days, the Muslim League did not exist in our province. The British felt they needed some organization in opposition to our movement, and therefore they founded a Khaksar party with the help of Inayatullah Khan Mashriqi, the headmaster of the government high school at Peshawar. The Khudaidad Khidmatgars movement was extremely popular, and therefore the Khaksar party did not make much headway in the frontier province, though it did spread to other parts of India. Later, Inayatullah Khan gave in and wrote to the government in Lucknow asking for pardon. That was the end of Khaksar party. Some other parties like that were started in the province, but none of them could have competed with the Khudaidad Khidmatgars, and they were all short-lived. We really did work very hard in the province, and the Khudaidad Khidmatgar movement spread like wildfire. In Kohad district alone, there were 100,000 Khudaidad Khidmatgars. The British could not tolerate the idea of popularity, and they would have loved to arrest me. I was well aware of this, and therefore I did as much work as I could. The British even tried to get Gandhiji to agree to my being arrested, but he did not agree. There was some altercation between Gandhiji and the Viceroy over this, and in the end Gandhiji was obliged to send for me. Gandhiji was at Bardoli and he wanted me to go there. On the way at Bhopal station, I happened to meet Shoaib Qureshi, the son-in-law of Muhammad Ali, with whom I had worked in the Khilafat movement. He was now the Nawab of Bhopal. He insisted that I spend the night at Bhopal as the guest of the Nawab. Shaukat Ali was staying there too. I had a long private talk with Nawab Sahib. He said to me, "If you like, we can both go and see the Viceroy. I had every hope that he will listen to you and grant whatever you want for the Pakhtuns." But I refused, and I told Nawab Sahib, "I am afraid I cannot share your confidence in the Viceroy. Besides, I am going to Bardoli now to see Gandhiji. At Bardoli, I had a long talk with Mahatma Ji. I told him, all these accusations against me are only excuses to have me arrested. The government do not want me to continue my work. Could you not ask the Viceroy to send for all those who have complaints against me? Then you and the Viceroy can judge whether there is any truth in them. If you both find there is, I will accept any punishment you decide to give me." Gandhiji did write to the Viceroy and not only told him about my proposal but also asked for permission to visit the frontier province and see for himself what was happening there. He added that if the Viceroy agreed, we would both go and see him at his summer residence at Simla and discuss the whole matter. Gandhiji asked me to stay for a few days to wait the Viceroy's reply. When the answer came, it said that there was no need for us to go to Simla, neither was it advisable for Gandhiji to visit the frontier province just then. This reply made Gandhiji realize that I was right, and he told me to go ahead with my work. At Simla, I attended a meeting of the Congress Working Committee at Simla. Two Khidaidat Khidmatgars accompanied me. At the meeting, there was some discussion in connection with Gandhiji's forthcoming visit to London for the Round Table Conference. After Gandhiji left, we stayed on at Simla. A student of Islamia College, whose father was one of the top officers in the intelligence department, invited me for dinner at the Cecil Hotel. He had also invited Feroz Khan Noon and some other Punjabi friends. The two Khudai Dad Khidmatgars went with me. They were handsome young men and they looked very smart in their red uniforms. The dining room was full of Englishmen and their wives. And when our party entered, they all looked at us with great curiosity. Feroz Khan Noon complained that our joining the Congress had done great harm to the Muslims. I said that is not our fault. We came to you first of all, but you gave us a clear no. So we joined the Congress. We are tired of being the slaves of the British. We want to be free. If you want freedom, we are with you. Feroz Khan Noon said, very well, I shall discuss it with my colleagues and let you know. But I heard no more from him, and the next time I saw him was in 1946 in Patna during the Bihar riots. While I was at Simla, Mr. Howell, the Foreign Secretary in the Government of India, wrote to me saying, I would appreciate it very much if you could come and see me. I replied, I am afraid I will not be able to come and see you. Then Mr. Howell wrote to Gandhiji and Gandhiji asked me why I had refused to see Mr. Howell. I told Gandhiji that I am only a weak human being and liable to a slip. I'd rather avoid that. This made Gandhiji laugh. He said, I meet the British and have discussions with them, don't I? But you are Mahatma. I said, well, in the end, I agreed to see Mr. Howell just to please Gandhiji. Actually, Mr. Howell was a very pleasant man. He had served in the frontier province and so had Mr. Wiley, who was the Deputy Foreign Secretary and whom I knew quite well. In the course of our conversation, Mr. Howell complained, we used to have very good relations with the Pakhtuns, but since some of them have started to make fiery speeches, all that has been spoiled. I said, fiery speeches do not necessarily spoil relations. Our relations have been spoiled by the way of the British have treated the Pathans. Mr. Wiley can tell you about that. Young man, I added, turning to Mr. Wiley. Why aren't you saying anything? You are the Deputy Commissioner of Peshawar. You know what I am talking about. It was because of you people that we joined the Congress. While we were talking, the telephone rang and Mr. Howell answered it. It was a call from Mr. Emerson, the Home Secretary, who wanted me to go and see him. I said, how can I go and see him? I have no appointment with him. But when Mr. Howell conveyed this message to the Home Secretary, he said, please ask Abdul Ghaffar Khan to come and see me just for a few minutes. It is on your way, Mr. Howell added. So I agreed, and taking leave from Mr. Howell and Mr. Wiley, I went to see Mr. Emerson. As soon as I entered the room, Mr. Emerson said pompously, look here, in your speech in Meerut, you said that though the British have white faces, their hearts are black. If I publish that speech in London, I don't think there would be much hope for the reforms you want. I told him, but that was not all I said. I said much more than that. You have my permission to publish the speech, but the full speech. I said that we had excellent relations with the British and that we loved them. I said that we gave them the best of our food instead of eating it ourselves and giving it to our children. I said that we did all that we could to make them happy, but it was all in vain. They introduced no reforms, not even those refused by India. These are the reasons why I said that though the British have white faces, it appears that their hearts are black. Mr. Emerson's manner was very different from Mr. Howell's, who had been very pleasant and courteous, whereas Mr. Emerson was not, possibly because he had spent most of his time in Punjab. While I was at Simla, a friend of one of the correspondents of the Civil and Military Gazette used to come and visit me. For him, I learned that This correspondent had created a lot of misunderstandings about my meeting with the Viceroy. He had published a completely false piece of information that Congress Working Committee would not accept my views on the enquiries into frontier incidents, and therefore I had sent in my resignation. This news had created great excitement in Punjab and frontier province. When I arrived in Lahore, Dr. Sahibzada Abdul Qayyum sent a man to me who had specially come from the frontier province with the message, "For God's sake, don't leave Congress, for if you do, the British will not do anything for the benefit of the province." When I returned from Simla, I found that the British had managed to sow fear and resentment in the minds of some of my colleagues, and that they were now secretly working against me. Some other colleagues thought that this was not in the interest of the movement. They wanted to advise me, and therefore they called a meeting at Mia Jafir Shah's house. My opponents, who were also present, said that they did not trust the Hindus and they were afraid that we would be deprived of our rights at the Round Table Conference. They thought we should pass a resolution to that effect. I said that as the Hindus had never been disloyal or dishonest yet, there was no point in passing a resolution of that kind. Nobody had yet been arrested or imprisoned because of them. And I said, I promise you that if ever they are disloyal, we Khudaidat Khidmatgars will be behind you. Thus, we were able to smooth our differences. When Sir Ralph Griffith was the commissioner of the frontier province, he wanted to hold a darbar to which he had invited me to. I declined the invitation, whereupon he sent word that I was to go and see him. I did not go. He then sent a policeman, and I had no choice but to go with him. In the course of our conversation, he mentioned the dangers which, according to him, the country was facing. We are faced with three possible dangers, he said. The tribes, Afghanistan, and Russia. If you really think that the tribes are a potential danger, I said, the best way to avert it is to bring about a social reforms among the tribes. We are prepared to help and assist you in every possible way. But would you expect you to give up your present tribal policy and look upon the tribesmen not as enemies but as friends? And we would also expect you to sit down with us and with our help draw up and carry out a program of real improvement for the tribes. Sir Ralph took out a pencil and paper and began to take notes of everything I said. I continued, if you spend half the amount of money you are wasting on ruining and killing the tribal people, on setting up cottage industries for them, they would be able to earn an honest and independent living, and they would get acquainted with the arts and crafts, industry and trade. If you build schools for them, you would be helping their children to get a new start in life. And if you build hospitals for them, they would be able to get proper treatment for their illnesses. All this would help to make these gentle, brave Pathans into useful members of Pakhtun society, and the whole country would benefit. As for the danger from Afghanistan, I told the Chief Commissioner that it did not exist except in his imagination. The Afghanistan government is always friendly to the British, I told him, for the simple reason that Afghanistan cannot have a government you disapprove of. Besides, the Afghans are our brothers, and if you make friends with the Pathans, naturally the Afghans will be your friends. That leaves the danger from Russia, I continued. Well, the best way to deal with that is to grant us our rights and give us our independence. Ours is a large country stretching from the river Amu to halfway down Punjab. Who can attack us? If anyone has any idea of waging a war against us, we shall defend our country with our lives. Sir Ralph took down everything I said, and then he told me that he was going to Delhi to discuss all this with the Viceroy. Judging by the expression on his face, I concluded that he was inclined to agree with me. You will come again, won't you? He said. I laughed and replied, if I do, it will be in the same way that I came today. What I meant was that he would have to send the police for me. He said, "Look, do you see all the people there waiting to see me? Some of them have been waiting for days. There are some Khans and Khan Bahadurs among them too, but I haven't given them any interviews nor have made any appointments with them. But you, whom I request to come and see me, is not interested." I laughed again. "Griffith Sahab," I said, "these people are making the pilgrimage to your residence for their personal benefit. I have no personal axe to grind and I have no personal favors. So why should I waste my energy on flattery?" Griffith Sahab banged his fist on the table and said, "It is an ill-fated government indeed that keeps the honest people at a distance and surrounds itself with dishonest people. God help the British government." I took leave for Sir Ralph. Soon after my visit, he went to Delhi to see the Viceroy. I was full of hope that, God willing, something would at last be done for my country and my people. But the first thing Sir Ralph did when having seen the Viceroy, he returned from Delhi, was to rob me of my freedom. On 24th of December 1931, I was arrested. I was the first man in India to be arrested at that time. Though Gandhi ji had not yet returned from the Round Table Conference in London, the outrages began. After I had been detained, thousands of Pathans were also arrested. Violence or non-violence. There were two freedom movements in our province. One believed in violence and the other in non-violence. The violent movement had been founded first. It was not until 40 or 50 years later, in 1929, that the non-violent movement was started. The British had been able to deal with the violent movement by taking violent countermeasures, but they had not been able to suppress the non-violent movement in spite of all their unspeakable cruelty and innumerable arrests and imprisonments. The violent movement had created fear and cowardice in the people's mind. It had weakened the people's courage and morale. But the non-violent movement had made people fearless and brave and inspired them with a high sense of morality. The violent movement had preached hatred, but the non-violent movement preached love and brotherhood. It spoke of a new life for the Pathans, a life of dedication to their nation and their brethren. It spoke of great and splendid revolution in the art and in culture, in poetry, in their whole social life. The truth is, of course, that violence is born of hatred and non-violence is born of love. One reason for the hatred was the injustice on part of the British. Suppose someone had killed an Englishman and he was caught. The British would then not only punish the culprit, but they would take his whole village and his whole district suffer. Heavy fines would be imposed, arrests would be made, many people would be imprisoned. People would naturally look upon the culprit and upon his whole violent movement as the sole cause of all cruelty and oppression they had to suffer. On the other hand, they saw that in the non-violent movement, everyone tried to avoid trouble, everyone tried to prevent harm being done to the innocent people. They saw that our movement was only concerned with the welfare of the country, and that made them sympathetic towards our movement. These were the reasons why the violent movement failed and the non-violent movement was successful. It was through non-violence that the country would be freed, through non-violence that British would be driven out. But the Khudai Khidmatgar movement was not just a political movement. Apart from being the political party of the Pathans, it was also a spiritual movement. It was the movement that taught the Pathans love and brotherhood, that inspired them with a sense of unity, patriotism, and the desire to service. The Pathans used to quarrel among themselves. Antagonism and feuds ruined their homes and families. Through the non-violent movement, all was changed. The British used to say a non-violent Pathan is more dangerous than the violent Pathan. This was the reason for the innumerable cruelties they inflicted on us in 1932. All the arrests, imprisonments, and other disgraceful acts of the British had only one object: to provoke the Pathans to be violent. But their mean, ignoble schemes did not work. I shall give you just a few examples of the kind of means they employed. The British used to strip the Pathans of their clothes. When the Khudai Khidmatkars were picketing in Charsadda, the British made them take off all their clothes. Then they tied a noose round their testicles and pulled it hard. When the men fainted with pain, they would be thrown into a tub full of urine and excrement. This is only one example of the unspeakable humiliation and suffering inflicted upon the Khudai Khidmatkars. There were innumerable cases like this of unprintable cruelty and shameless humiliation. In Kohat, many of our Khudai Khidmatkars had been arrested. This was in the month of January and it was bitterly cold. The Khudai Khidmatkars were made to take a dip in ice-cold water. In Haripur prison alone, 10 to 12,000 Khudai Khidmatgars were locked up, and in spite of the bitter cold, they were only allotted one blanket and one chapati each. And there were men who did not even get that. Many of the educated prisoners were severely whipped. Some of them were made to work the wheel of an oil press. Many of were kept in solitary confinement. In short, every kind of cruelty that anyone could think of was inflicted on those poor people. On the 24th of December 1931, I was staying with my brother, Dr. Khan Sahab. I was overworked and ill. At about midnight, the police came and arrested me. They took my brother also. We were taken by car as far as Atak Bridge. A little later, Qazi Ataullah Khan and Sadullah Khan, my brother's eldest son, who had also been arrested, were brought there. Sadullah had just returned from England. We were all put in a special train. An inspector of the police, a Sikh, escorted us. He knew Qazi Sahib, and he also told us that Dr. Khan Sahib had one time saved his life. There was another inspector with us too, a Punjabi. I have always made it a point whenever I have been arrested not to ask any questions, nor to ask the escort or the guards to do anything for me. Qazi Sahib asked the Pakhtun officer to get him a newspaper, but the officer was afraid and he ignored the request. The Punjabi officer's special task seemed to be to shut the windows every time we opened them, lest anybody should see us. I got tired of this and said, "What is the idea, young man? Are you trying to keep us in parda? We are not women, you know." But he took no notice. When we crossed the border into the UP, United Provinces, now Uttar Pradesh, we were handed over to the British officer and a white sergeant. The British officer opened the door of the compartment and said to me, "Why don't you get down and stretch your legs?" What a difference between a British officer and a Punjabi Muslim officer. Yet we were fighting the British. We wanted to take over the government from them and give it to the people like our Punjabi brother. After I had got back to my compartment, the Englishman came to me again with a glass in his hand, which he offered to me in the most friendly manner. "Have a drink," he said. He was rather surprised when I told him that I didn't drink, but I have never been able to forget his kindness and courtesy. At Allahabad, Dr. Khan Sahib was taken off the train and sent to Naini prison. A little further, Sadullah was separated from us and taken to Benares. When we had crossed the border into Bihar, Qazi Ataullah Khan was also taken to Gaya. Finally, I was taken to Hazaribagh prison, which was 40 miles from Hazirabagh station. I was taken there by car, accompanied by the police inspector from Peshawar and two British officers, one of whom was a deputy commissioner and the other a superintendent of the police. As soon as I had settled down, they gave me the British newspaper to read. Actually, the same paper that Qazi Ataullah Sahib had asked for and which the Peshawar police officer had not dared get for him. Once inside the prison officer, a Hindu, asked me, "Do you know the officer who brought you here? Who is he? Where is he from?" I asked him why he wanted to know. "He is a villain," he said. "Do you know? He asked me to keep a special eye on me." "Do you know, he asked me to keep a special eye on you. He said you are a dangerous man." I was put into a barrack, and apart from the prison officials, I was not allowed to see anyone. I was a state prisoner now. Brotherhood in prison. The collector came to see me once a month. I always get ill when I am alone, and now too my health was gradually going down. The collector was a very nice man. He wrote to the government to ask whether my colleagues who were in prison in Gaya could be sent to Hazirabad to give me company. Qazi Sahab was in Gaya prison and he was also in solitary confinement. At least I was able to get a good night's rest, but poor Qazi Sahab did not even get that. Like me, he was a thorn in the flesh of the government. The government refused the collector's request, but instead of Qazi Sahab, they sent Dr. Khan Sahib to Hazirabad. He was surprised to find that I was kept locked up in the barracks all the time, for at 9 he had been allowed to go out and take exercise. The superintendent of Hazirabad prison was a Punjabi. He knew Dr. Khan Sahib, for during the war in Europe, they had at one time been posted in the same place. But the man was a coward, and whenever Dr. Khan Sahib raised a question of going out for a stroll, he used to say, "They'll kill me if I let you out." But Dr. Khan Sahib insisted, and in the end, we were allowed to go for a stroll, but only just outside the window. Then I found out that Rajendra Prasad, Acharya, Kripalani, and many other political workers from Bihar were in this prison too, and I managed to see them from time to time. I'm very fond of the people of Bihar, and once I had the permission to leave the barrack, I was able to meet them from time to time, and we soon established a firm friendship. The prison officer known as Chote Sahib, the jailer, was a good person and he felt great sympathy for the patriots. We arranged with him that any political prisoner who was about to be released would come and see us on the eve of their departure. We used to give them a farewell tea party. The Biharis are a very nice people indeed, but they are rather orthodox and afraid of losing caste. Living with us made them a great deal more broad-minded. At one of our tea parties, I myself poured out the tea for our guest and handed him a cup as well as a plate of pakoras, a kind of savory donut. Dr. Khan Sahib put a fried brinjal on his plate too. Our guest drank the tea and ate his snacks, and then he burst out laughing. When I asked him what the joke was, he said, "Just imagine, one day a Muslim postman delivered a postcard at my house. He was holding the postcard by one corner, and I very cautiously took it from him by the other corner with the tips of my finger. My brother, who had witnessed this performance, immediately poured water over my hand, saying, 'You have been polluted.' I came to love the Bihari leaders, and they will always occupy a special place in my heart. The Bihari women are no less brave and courageous than the men, and they have made great sacrifices for the cause of the freedom of the country. I will tell you a story of one Bihari woman. She was a prisoner in the same prison, and the Chote Sahab told me her story. He said, "This woman prisoner's husband, who was a pleader, came to visit her today. He had brought the children with him. There were 5 of them. He begged his wife to keep the 2 youngest children with her, and he said he would look after the others. But the woman refused. 'I would not have looked after all of them,' she said. 'I would have looked after all of them,' she said, 'but you wouldn't listen to me. Now they are your responsibility.' The Chote Sahab had always asked her what she meant, and she told him, 'When the Congress bugle sounded and called us to fight for freedom, I asked my husband to join the ranks of the Congress. But he said that he was busy with the court case and he wanted to see that through first. After that, whenever I asked him when he would be ready to do his bit for the freedom of the country, he had some excuse or another. When I realized that he didn't really want to join in the struggle, I decided that I would have to go court arrest, and I went picketing. And that is why I am here now in the same prison as Rajendra Babu. There were many men and women like that in this prison. 3 years later, when I was released from the prison, this courageous woman invited me to her house. Though I was a state prisoner, my children were not given any allowance, while Dr. Khan Sahib and Qazi Sahib's families did receive allowances. So did the mother of Asadullah. The result was that Ghani had returned from America before he finished his studies because he was short of funds. I owned considerable property, but I had been in prison for a long time and there was no one to look after it. I received no income from it because my tenants, that is my agricultural employees, were at the government's suggestion making away with my profits. I was finally released after 3 years imprisonment, but I was not allowed to go either the frontier or Punjab. We were told that we could go anywhere in India as long as we stayed away from Punjab and the frontier province. We had made many friends in Bahar, former political prisoners. So from Hazira Bagh, we went to Patna, where we visited Rajendra Prasad and other friends. Then we went to Varda, where we had been invited to stay with Gandhiji and Jamal Lal Bajaj. That year, 1934, the All India Congress was to meet in Bombay. When the news of our arrival in Varda got around, the reception committee decided to elect me president of this Congress. Rajendra Prasad even sent me a telegram to inform me that I had been elected. But I refused. I sent a telegram saying, I'm a soldier and I'm a Khudai Khidmatkar and I only want to serve.